Welcome back to another episode of the Lead with Moxie podcast. I'm Heather Legg, and I'm here with Terry Whittington, my colleague in Envision Success Inc. And today we were having a conversation
We
before,
were.
and we landed on a topic that we think has value to a lot of people, a lot of different organizations. And it's a great time of year to be talking about this topic as well, which is that of when we're thinking about our legacy, our objective, or our goals, we are often making assumptions that are not serving us well. So we want to get rid of invalid assumptions when we're dealing with sometimes our own goals and
hmm
objectives, but most often other people. So this is very relevant to leaders, but really all of us.
I agree. We were talking a little bit about the on the order of assumption that we have a tendency to project our legacies and our goals or our objectives onto another individual and just make that assumption that, well, of course, this is their goal. This is their objective. This is what they want their legacy to be. And I feel like we not only, as Heather was saying, we not only shortchange ourselves, but I feel like we also shortchange um our what we can contribute to our contribution to another individual, because we have shortchanged them based on what we think our objectives and goals should be, and that's not theirs. And so we don't
Right.
pour into them in a way that we could pour into them if we just would take a moment to just step back and look at it a little bit more broadly.
Yes. Okay. So this has immense value as a leader with a team, or anyone who's helping others with their own goals and objectives, creating their legacy. So as coaches, this is very relevant for us as well. And so much of coaching and leadership, there's a lot of overlap.
Mhm.
Yeah, reasonable amount for sure.
There is.
So one of the best things that we can do to be aware of assumptions and to avoid making invalid assumptions is to pause. So we
Yes.
have just a really simple formula, and this works in so many areas of life. The formula is essentially pause, ask questions, and reflect and maybe redirect.
The part that resonates with me so much, there's two things. One, I need to practice a pause better. I'm
No,
I'm not very
that's all of
good
us.
at that. Yes, I think we have a tendency to be very reactive, a lot of us. But the question part, that is just who I am. And in fact, I have started telling people that, okay, I'm sorry, but I am the question gal. I'm just going to keep asking questions. And
Apologizing.
yes,
Questions add
but
a lot of clarity and a lot of value.
I
So,
agree, but not everybody is in the mindset where questions are good. We live in this microwave society where I want the answer and I want it now. And
yeah.
before we can really give that answer that would be specific to that individual or that situation or that organization or that relationship or that business, we do need to ask enough questions so that we can start finding out the legacy, the goals, the objectives of this other individual.
Mhm.
Another thing, Heather, I know this is a little bit off of the topic that you and I were talking about, but I remember when I was going through coaching that we all know the who, what, why, when, where, all of that. But we focus so many times on the what do we do? How do we do it? When do we do it? Where do we do it? And all of those questions can be answered so much more specifically and so much more effectively if we direct it through the who of the individual that we are speaking with, working with, and or who are we? Who do we want to be? And then the how, what, when, where is appropriated through that, which brings us back to the legacies, the goals, and the objectives.
I'm gonna, I love that example. And my mind went immediately to the why because, it's like Simon Sinek,
Mhm.
start with why. That is a powerful concept, a model that we can all use. So if we're focusing on the who, if it's ourselves and we're reflecting on our own goals, hey, what do I want to achieve
Mhm.
next year, next quarter, next week, whatever it is? Okay, let me get really centered in the who I am, or this using this same sort of exercise, the same sort of formula for somebody else. I'm sitting with Terry now, we're talking about her goals. I'm like, okay, what do I know about Terry? I know a lot about Terry because I've known you a long time, but
Mhm.
even today, I asked you several clarifying questions to make sure
Mhm.
that I was understanding correctly. So, as coaches, we're taught and leaders, we can all use this. As coaches, we're taught to navigate by curiosity and always seek to understand the other person.
Absolutely.
And if you are a little guilty of the all too common habit of thinking about what you're going to say while the other person's talking, smack on the hand.
Put a rubber band on.
Right. Yeah. Do something. Just work on it. It takes a little practice. This is far too common in our society. And you have to get to a point where you can trust that you're gonna know what to say in the moment. And as we're riffing here, we don't have a script. We have a couple points on a sticky note and we're just rolling with it.
Right. And you, when we were talking earlier with regard to being so quick to respond to an individual or to make, again, just as we started off with these invalid assumptions, I remember recently sitting in a situation where we were talking about legacy, our legacy. And that's what we started this conversation on, is legacy. And this individual was talking about the legacy that they wanted to leave their children. And their legacy that they wanted to leave their children was to have them be millionaires, which is an incredible legacy to give. And
especially for the kids.
Exactly. I would have loved that if my parents would have done that, but they did not. So as the conversation continued, this individual said, I think that would be a great legacy to leave to my children. And I think it would be a much better legacy to leave my children than if I helped 10, 20, 30 other individuals become millionaires. And that did not resonate with me because immediately, and who I am as an individual, going back to the who, was like, oh my goodness. And I did say, I think that would be an incredible legacy to leave my children, that I helped 10, 20, 30 other people become millionaires for a number of reasons. Number one, if I am able and equipped or whatever, have something that resonates with other individuals, 10, 20, 30, that they were enabled or empowered to become millionaires, wouldn't those same tools be readily available to my children? And
excellent.
And it's kind of like the second point was the concept went into my mind immediately is like, well, you can give a person a fish and feed them for a day, or you can teach them how to fish so that it can be fed for a lifetime. So it doesn't make their objective or their goal or the legacy they want to leave their children invalid or lesser than. It's just different. But we are so quick to assume, well, of course, doesn't everybody want their children to be millionaires? And that's what I'm going to do, as opposed to there might be a different way that they leave that same legacy to their children.
That's a really good example, because in that moment when that person was telling you, he was passionately telling you about his own objective, and he was making the assumption that you felt the same way.
Exactly.
And then you said, well, no, actually, I think I kind of like the other idea, which is personally for me, So yeah, what a great example. And we were talking about a sales related example earlier too. So this is really valuable in any conversation, any relationship, business or personal, whether it's a leadership and you're developing an employee, or go back to this sales story. I'm going to let you tell.
Okay. So, I guess it's okay to say that at nearly 68 years of age, I did decide to pull the plug and I became a realtor in July of this year. So you can teach old dogs new tricks, by the way. And
absolutely.
So as this thought crossed my mind about another person's goals or objectives, it came across my mind with regard to getting a listing and selling a house. So as a realtor, it's very tempting to sit down and think immediately when you're talking with your potential, the seller of the home, that they want to make the most money they can out of the sale of their house. And while that may be true in, I don't know what percentage of cases, that's an assumption, and it may be an invalid assumption because their objectives may not be to get the most money out of the house. They may have different goals and objectives about what type of an individual they want in their home to take care of their home. They may have other personal situations within their life that make it not just be about getting the most money out of their house. Timing may
Yeah,
factor in with
they might.
regard
Yep.
to, well, I know I'm going to lose out on this sale, but they're needing to close at such and such a time, and I just really can't do that right then. And so there are many
Yeah.
objectives that and goals that may not necessarily line up with what we go into a situation assuming they need. And so we, again, going back to what Heather was saying, pause. Just pause. Stop for a minute, take a breath, look at it from a 40,000-foot view, remove yourself from the situation, and then come back and think about the questions that you can ask. And then as you are asking the questions and they're giving you the answers, and you reflect upon that. And then you find the process by which you can move them forward in a successful way and in the manner in which speaks and resonates most distinctly to them.
Yes. I jokingly said, but I'm gonna share it here. I said, I gotta check myself before I wreck myself.
I love that.
Basically, I mean, we can have a little fun with that, but it's a good reminder. It's a fun way to say, let me pause and just reflect if I'm making assumptions that may be invalid, and then what do I do about it? So I will ask. I'll say, frequently I'll just be completely overt about it. Okay, I've made an assumption here. Help me check if I'm understanding what your intention is correctly. Am I getting this right? So we can ask those clarifying questions that root out any inadvertent assumptions that we might be making. And that strengthens the relationship. It strengthens the trust. It strengthens the understanding, and you can move forward on the same page, so to speak, versus thinking you're on the same page and you're in two different books.
Two different continents.
Two different planets. Yeah, exactly. So it happens a lot in our society. And I think it's just because of partly how we're wired as human beings. We see uh, we project ourselves in other people. We're labeling, we're seeing what we want to see, we're hearing what we want to hear. We are filtering constantly.
Yes, we
and
are.
we've gotta ask more questions and just be open to the fact that we don't know it all. The other person sitting across from us, especially if we go back to leadership examples, we might think they want to elevate their career and they want to be promoted and they want to earn more money and they want that next project. And we don't understand why they're not taking the initiative and we're pissed off.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not everyone's operating system.
Right. Right.
They don't necessarily, or maybe they want that, but they've never even really considered the possibility that they have the capacity. So they've ruled themselves out even though they kind of want that. So you have to really listen to the words that people are using, the continuity or the inconsistencies of what they tell you and how they're acting, and just be, have some compassion. We need to give ourselves some grace, and we need to give others that we're around some grace if they don't have all the answers when we're asking them some clarifying questions. But we can use this simple formula even if you just met somebody at a cocktail party or on an elevator, or if you're having a really deep, impactful conversation with someone on your team or someone who's really important to you. We just want to pause. Let's ask some questions for clarity, and we can help we can help people understand their own goals and objectives. We can help ourselves understand our own goals and objectives. And I mean, especially for us as we're operating, we're always looking to help people. Is then once I know I've understood you correctly, I can help you create that. But if I've been on the wrong track and I'm trying to steer you down this path and you're not meeting your goals and objectives, you may quit, you may be really upset with me, you may be discombobulated and not know why. Right? So it's much better for all of our relationships. And I feel like I'm really rambling at this point, but
Well, I was just going to tap in conclusion on that, is that you hit on something earlier too, by way of motivation and incentivizing people. There's been something that's gone around on LinkedIn for quite some time about employees not really caring if they have a pizza party and they have this or that or other in their employee room. But yet sometimes those are the things that we think that that's what we do to build culture or, whatever in our company. And so it's asking those questions of your team and finding out exactly what is going to motivate you. How can I support you in your goals and your endeavors? Equally as well, too, which we have talked about on previous recordings, is there are many tools out there that help you as a leader, as a as a person in your relationships or whatever, such as the DISC model of human behavior, or the working geniuses, or all of the many tools that are out there to help you identify who it is that you are speaking to, what your audience is, your relationships, and equally to assess yourself and how you interact with them to make this be a successful win-win, as best as we can, a
Mm-hmm.
win-win
Yep.
for both sides, yourself and your team or the other individual involved. And that was all I was going to add to what you said. I thought you did a great job.
Oh, well, back at you. Yeah. So disc is great. I mean, so Terry's got some additional blogs on disc out there. She's got a whole series of blogs on the disc model of human behavior, and we have some things about working genius out there. There are so many different
Mhm.
assessments and tools that we could pull into this conversation that would be helpful. And I'm going to drop one more in, and then I think we might as well wrap up.
Okay.
Which is something that I created eons ago as I was being a coach since 2006. It was pretty early on. I don't remember when, probably that first year. I created this goal achieving guide for people. And so it walks people through a process of really peeling back the layers and figuring out what's that purpose, mission, goals. And some of my clients or the people that were in my mastermind groups from years ago still like to use that
Mhm.
every year. So I'll drop a link in the post, and you can download a free copy of the goal achieving guide if that's helpful for you this time of year. But otherwise, let's make sure we're
We
giving
are
people,
pausing, we're asking, and we're reflecting.
yes,
Mhm.
take a pause, take a beat just before we go, oh, you want to make more money, right? Like, what is it that you'd like?
Oh, I just looked at that.
Just pause.
Go par. Par. Pause, ask, reflect. Par. Shoot for par.
Shoot for par. Great. I love it. I'm going to put that in the show notes.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks again for listening to this episode of the Lead with Moxie podcast. I'm Heather Legg. This is Terry Whittington. And definitely let us know what you think. Let us know what was helpful, what resonated with you, and what other topics you'd like to hear on the podcast.